Welcome to the Money Over 50 podcast, brought to you by Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue from Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50 with Dallas and Michael. Dallas, today you're here to talk about money as a medium.
Thanks, Michael. So there's a quote that jumped out at me in a book I read recently, which I thought really succinctly wrapped up a lot of the way that we think about it. So money has a weird way of meaning all different things to all different people, and there becomes this emotional attachment to it, and you know, arguments and wars have been fought over it and all these sorts of things, and so it's, you know, become this big thing. The phrase that I read in this book was that money is a medium for transferring work and enterprise into possessions and experiences. And I thought that is a great way to wrap that up, because that's all it is. That's all that money actually is, and that's all it's useful for, is to transfer work and enterprise into possessions and experiences. So I'll let that sit with people for a minute. What I then, as I've said before, which then led me into the next thought, which is, how does that apply to retirement planning? Because I'm sick in the head and everything applies to that. But the phrase that I came up with is, retirement planning is about transferring work and enterprise into money while you're working, and then transferring that money into possessions and experiences after retirement. That's all there is to it. All of the rest of it, all the legislation, all of the investment advice, all of the this versus this, all of the different strategies that you could use, all the comparisons, all the projections, all the rest of it, that's really what it boils down to, is that what we want to do is transfer work and enterprise into money while you're working, and then transfer money into possessions and experiences after your retirement. That's the first, my first thoughts on that. Now I'll give you a chance to jump in there if you have anything you want to.
Yeah, look, it's a good way to think of it. I like so money is a medium for transferring work and enterprise into possessions and experiences.
Yeah.
Retirement planning is about transferring work and enterprise, so the same thing, into money while working, and then transferring money into possessions and experiences after retirement. So what's interesting about this is I agree. I completely agree with that at the large scale. So
it's interesting because normally we'd can each other about now.
Look, it's interesting when you think about it like that. Well, and it sort of denotes there's a slider there.
Yep.
And the better you do a job with the first part,
yes,
the actual transferring of work and enterprise into possessions and experiences.
Yeah.
The transferring of work and enterprise into money for your retirement planning.
Yeah.
The better that you do of that job, the more that slider bar can come to the left, which allows you then to go into retirement in air quotes, because it's the poor, for want of a better word, it's the poor choice of a word. And then you're able to transfer that money or that energy into possessions and experiences after that. On a grand scale, I like it. I'm in agreement with that. It's all about how you do it.
Yes,
obviously.
But I think that, so like I guess my theory with this is that we spend a lot of time talking about the how and some time talking about the why. But if you think of it this way, as like, while you're working, so while you're working, so there's a couple of different components of this that I want to pull apart. The first bit is that while you're working, your work and enterprise is being transferred into money. If that is immediately getting transferred all into possessions and experiences, so there's no money left at the end.
Yes.
If there's $100,000 worth of income from work and enterprise, and then $100,000 worth of possessions and experiences that are getting consumed every year, there's nothing left over. So that's step one. We've talked about that many times.
It's one way to live.
Let's call it one way to live. And that's the whole point. Is we've said this before many times. If that's how you're going to do it, then that's fine.
We're not against that.
No.
If you're making a conscious effort to say, that's what I want to do, I want to transfer, I want to do this work, and I want to go and party this away, or I'm going to travel it away, or whatever, we have no argument with that.
But there's no retirement planning.
No, there's no
you just immediately transfer it across. And so it's like the equivalent of you go to the shop every day, you buy enough food to eat that day. You don't need a fridge because you just buy the food, you eat the food, and then you go back to the shop tomorrow.
Yep.
So where retirement planning comes into it is that concept. Like, I think splitting that into two separate things, because they are. It doesn't feel like it for a lot of people because there are so many people where money comes in, hits the bank account, and then immediately goes out. They're two separate parts of the equation. Firstly, you've got to transfer your work and enterprise into money. So that's part one. Then you have a choice of that money that I have obtained with that work and enterprise. How do I transfer that into possessions and experiences? And what's the trade-off between what possessions and experiences do I transfer that into now, and what do I save for the future to then transfer into possessions and experiences? And so I guess there's two parts to that, where we've just jokingly talked about people who don't transfer any of their work. It just slips through the fingers and basically goes straight from work and enterprise, possessions, experiences. There's none left over, so they spend everything. There are also people who don't transfer enough of they've got the first bit worked out. They do a really good job of transferring work and enterprise into money. They actually don't do a good job of transferring that into possessions and experiences, and they've got far more money than what they need. And there are possessions and experiences that they could go and spend money on that would make their life happier and more meaningful.
Yep.
And they just can't or won't do it.
Here's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
So possessions are tangible things.
Yep.
And experiences are intangible. Let's think of it that way.
Yeah.
So the people on the second example there that do a really, really good job of not spending much while they're working and transferring it into money.
Yeah.
And then they get to the point where their money is making so much money that they could go and do all of the possessions and the experiences in the world, and they're not doing that.
Yeah.
For some of those people, a thought occurred to me: the experience is the peace of mind of having that energy, that money.
Yeah. Sitting
so whether they've got 2 million or 3 million or 10 million or whatever, and they're living off $50,000 a year. Yeah. And they can't go close to even spending the money the money that they have throws to them every year. Yeah. There's an argument to say the experience for them is peace of mind.
It's interesting because we did a podcast. To me, that ties into a podcast we did recently about, like, I can't remember exactly how it's about, but money can't be both unreliable and make you feel safe. So I agree completely. There's a component of this, and we've talked about it a lot with, as people approach retirement, there's normally a buffer of money that we say that you need to have. You know, some people feel comfortable with 50 grand in their bank account, regardless of how much they've got in their super or pension accounts. And I've often used that example of that 50,000, the return that they've foregone on that by having that just sitting in cash. That's the best use of that money, because that brings them comfort and peace of mind. And that's the experience piece that you're talking about, is that the experience that they're getting from having more money theoretically than what they need is peace of mind. I'd push back on your argument there, though, and say that if you've got $3 million and you're spending $60,000 a year, if you're spending $60,000 a year because that is all the possessions and experiences that you want, and there's nothing else that you actually want, then that's completely fine. I do think that I see a fair bit where there's an element of fear where people aren't spending more than that, not because they don't have possessions and experiences that they would like to transfer that money into, but that they're afraid that that money will go away and they won't have enough.
Look, I agree. Yes, I mean we have some clients, and they're quite elderly, and they've been talking about travelling back to their homeland. Yeah. For quite some time. Yeah. And look, they just kept delaying, and all of a sudden here's coronavirus. And they haven't been able to do it. But Dallas, you and I had both said to these people on numerous occasions, look, go and do it now. You'll never run out of money.
Yep.
Like you've got enough money there.
Exactly.
You'll absolutely never run it. Just go and spend some time with your relatives and things like that.
Yeah.
And do it now. And they delayed. And then, of course, even if they wanted to in the last couple of years, they haven't been able to do that.
Yeah.
So I agree with you there.
Yeah.
What's an interesting thing for me is that we distill a lot of that for our clients. A big part of our job is distilling this down for our clients. So people come in to see us and they don't know how much they need. They don't know, therefore, how long they have to work.
Yep.
They don't know what they're going to spend in retirement.
Yep.
They don't know. They don't know any of that stuff. So it's very, very hard for them to make a start and to even say, okay, when do I?
Yeah.
How long do I work for? How much do I put away?
Yep.
All of those types of things. I think one of the things that we do, because we see these scenarios time and time again, and this is why you would actually, if you're selecting any professional, you don't want a generalist, you want a specialist that works with only a certain type of people.
Yeah. And
if you're one of those type of people that they work with, they just see that scenario so much more. So they see the conversations they're having with their clients are very similar conversations, and they have this knowledge, this built up knowledge that's not technical knowledge.
No.
So it's not how to get this tax deduction.
Yeah.
It's knowledge of...
It's like pattern recognition.
Well, this person, they thought they would need all of this money to live, but
people like that
they just don't really spend that money. They don't need that much. Yeah. And I think from what you're telling me, you're sort of similar to those types of people. So you probably only need this much every year in retirement. And okay, well, based on that, here's the things that you could do to get to that point of where you finished transferring work into money, and you can now start to transfer the built-up money into possessions and experiences. Yeah, again in air quotes, retirement, because for want of a better word, it's the best word that we have for that. So when you distill it down.
Well, I think that
when you look at it from the top level, sorry, Dallas, it's what you said is definitely it's an interesting way to think about it, and it is the right way to think about it.
Well, when you I've said this before, the analogy I've used. I remember reading somewhere that psychologists say that essentially all people fit into two buckets, which is they either need to be loosened or they need to be tightened.
Yep.
And I've sort of co-opted that and gone, that's kind of what happens with financial planning or retirement planning. People come in and right off the bat you can pick, they either need to be loosened or need to be tightened. And separate to that, there's the tax savings, there's the investment advice and all the rest of it. But some people need to be told, hey, it's going to be fine, don't stress. You're too worried, you're worried too much about this, and you're more worried about how to and this probably gives me some language around that, is that at the moment you're fixated on transferring work and enterprise into money, but that's fine. Like, you've already got enough money. You don't need to transfer more work and enterprise into money. You have the money that you need to have the possessions and experiences that you want. And then there are other people that need to be tightened, which is that their work and enterprise is flowing straight through to possessions and experiences. There's not enough built up money anywhere to fund that when they stop work. They need to be, basically tightened and put on track and gone, hey, what you're doing now you're not going to be able to afford to have those same possessions and experiences in future if you don't make a change here.
Yep.
So it is a very interesting one to group that into two buckets. And I guess that's sort of my thoughts on this, is that something that we, as you said before, the pattern recognition of what you get better at over time is that, so we've seen more and more now people in those last few years approaching retirement, and what you see is people who enjoy their retirement have actually given a bit of thought, and not so much even thought, but they have a fairly clear picture of this money, this retirement savings that I've built up. How am I going to transfer that into possessions and experiences that I want? And it may be a retirement that costs them $50,000 a year. It might be $200,000 a year, but there's at least a whether it's conscious or subconscious, they've given that decision has, they've worked through that. Where we've seen the early years of retirement not work that well is that people who haven't given that part of the equation any thought at all. And so we've spent 5 or 6 years working with people going, right, here's how we transfer your work and enterprise into retirement savings. Right, you're at this figure now, which is, you can spend. They haven't given any thought really to that. And so they trip over a step that isn't there. They're kind of at the point of, okay, well, now I've got this money. Well, what possessions and experiences do I want? I don't know. And that's where I think the non-thoughtful spending and that comes into it, is because you're looking around going, well, I don't really know what I don't know what I want, and I don't know what I should want. So I'm just going to look around me at either other people around me or at advertising to tell me what I should want, and then I'm going to do that. And I don't think that's... So I think that, I guess that's one of my thoughts off this, is that it's very important to get both parts of that equation right, is that you need to have the correct amount of focus on transferring your work and enterprise into money, and you have to have the correct amount of focus on transferring your money into possessions and experiences. And you've got to get... That's where, I hate the word balance, but that's kind of where it comes into it. Is not so much, you don't have to do that a certain way, but you have to give both parts of that some thought and a fair bit of thought, realistically. One other thing that I wanted to add there, which is the way that I like this wording, is that transferring work and enterprise as two separate things, because we've talked about a little bit about this concept in the podcast before, about we all know stories about people who, some people, money just seems to pop up for them. And it's, some of it is because they work hard, but it's often that word enterprise, which I actually really like and I'm going to co-opt, is that there is all sorts of people that work really hard, but don't use enterprise. And I don't really know what the formal definition of that would be, but we all know what that means. Like, if you're out there just slaving away, working really hard, but not being thoughtful about how your energy could best be applied, and you're doing yourself a disservice by just focusing on only one part of that, which is the work, and not focusing on the enterprise. And so, for example, if you've got two people who are working equally hard, one of them spends a bit of that time and energy on becoming the best in the world at this one little niche thing, and then developing a skill set that they can then go and get a promotion, and they go from earning $100,000 a year to $300,000 a year. You wouldn't say that they're working any harder than the person who's still earning $100,000 a year. It's just that they have applied a bit of enterprise into that, or the person who's doing that and then goes, I'm going to set up my own business and do this little niche thing that allows me to use that skill set and keep those profits for myself. So that's part another. I won't go. That's a bit of a digression there, but that's just another. That word is, if you think, I'm 50 now, I really need to work hard for the next 10 years. You do, but you need to be thoughtful about how do you apply your work and your enterprise into how to transfer that into money. It's not just about working as hard as possible.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Money Over 50 financial advisors. For more information and resources, visit the Money Over 50 website, mo50.com.au. We look forward to catching up again soon.